What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Comic Cave. We've got Phil Mucci from Gringo, Loco, and the Orgy and the Blood Freaks.
Professor
Oh,
Dario Bava and Gringo Loco.
Professor Dario.
There you go.
Yeah. And Orgy of the Blood Freaks. You got a new campaign for part 2 to Orgy of the Blood Freaks and for the double Gringo Loco, correct? That's what's going.
Correct.
Right. So
it's going on right now. Book 2. Like, we have a planned double feature trilogy, and book 1 you have there, and book 2 we're in the process of. It's all written and drawn. We're just in the coloring process now and the lettering process. So we're that's what the Kickstarter campaign's for. That's going on this moment.
So give us a rundown of where Dario came from, if for people who don't know who he is.
Well, Professor Dario Bava was the first graphic novel I wrote, was with that character. But he'd actually originally appeared in a music video that I wrote and directed for the band Huntress, called Sorrow. And it was like an Italian sort of colorful 70s kind of crazy vampire lesbian, mayhem kind of video. Very narrative, not a lot of band performance in it. And we fell in love with the character on set. Like, my business partner, Ian Mackey, he played Professor Dario Bava, this like Italian vampire slayer who smokes a bunch of weed and hangs out with the ladies, and he's just a very, very, very funny character. And even the crew fell in love with him. So we were like, God, we got to do more with this idea. This is a funny character, and it taps into all the stuff that I love about those movies. So we ended up writing. I ended up writing a little like series kind of idea that was like, maybe we can do animation like we do in our videos in little like 10-minute chunks. And I started writing a script for Professor Dario Bava, Orgy of the Blood Freaks. And we made a little teaser for that, an animated teaser for it, because we wanted to do it kind of how we had done our music videos. And we pitched that around for a while and got some play and then nothing. And then we decided, well, we need more visual stuff. So let's do a graphic novel. And I took like the series Bible and wrote Murder Vibes from the Monster Dimension, which did way better than we thought it was going to do, being independent and not having major distribution or anything. We have to keep everything kind of local. So that's where Professor Dario Bava came from. Yeah, he's an ex-Vatican exorcist who turned on, tuned in, and dropped out to fight monsters and stick it to the man with Future Chick, this time-traveling super hippie from A Heavy Tomorrow. And it's really fun. And Orgy of the Blood Freaks is actually the book 1 that we intended. Murder Vibes from the Monster Dimension is kind of just like an anthology that includes origin stories and sort of like introduces people to kind of like where these characters came from. I like that stuff, but it's not necessary. And Orgy of the Blood Freaks double feature with Gringo Loco. I have a demo here for you too, so I can show everyone. But that became the number 1 like seller of our books. We actually sold out of it. Actually don't have the original anymore because we sold out of this one, but it was this. And it was great. You guys have one of them, I believe.
Right here.
You flip it. Yeah, this is, the Comic-Con pitch is sexy Euro horror on one side, supernatural spaghetti western on the other.
Yeah.
And then some of the kids are like, what's a spaghetti western?
You ever seen Django?
Well, they probably saw the Tarantino Django, but they probably didn't even see
Django Unchained.
You never saw the original.
Yeah, exactly. The original is like the shit. Franco Nero, and that's that's one of the Sergios. There's Sergio Leone, there's Sergio Corbucci, in the spaghetti western realms. And there's another Franco Nero movie that a lot of people don't know about that I think is great. It's like the last of the spaghetti westerns, called Keoma with a K, Keoma. And that movie's awesome. I recommend you guys check it out. If you like Gringo Loco, you'd like that. Because after I wrote Gringo Loco and we were done with the book and it was being printed, I saw Keoma and I'm like, oh my god, this movie is like so much like Gringo Loco. You know, I don't want to spoil it for anybody.
Definitely check it out.
Yeah, my pops is into like a lot of westerns. I haven't watched those, the one you mentioned, but that's why when I read that one, I was like, oh, not picking favorites. They're both great. I just like this one more. How it is with comics sometimes, it's what speaks to you.
No, totally.
Kids, dude. I like chicks.
Yeah, and this guy. Hopefully it's for his.
It is totally like a drive-in double feature, though, like a monster movie double feature.
Yeah.
They're very different, even though I write them both and I color them both. I try to make them different, And it was, since we already had Professor Dario Bava, that's why I kind of came up with a double feature idea. It was like, I want to start doing Gringo Loco, but I don't want to have to do everything twice to kind of promote it or whatever. Like, let's try to put it together in some way. It makes it very hard online, actually, like the Kickstarter type thing and your online shop. It makes it a little harder, but in person, it really works great. And since COVID like let up a little bit, we got to do events, and that's how we ended up selling out of that book. It's like, because aggressive sales techniques like we used on you guys.
How they got it.
Good stuff.
But it worked. So tell us a little bit about the writing process then. When you're writing two books like this, do you focus on one, get that script done, and then go to the other one? Or do you kind of hop back and forth? Like, okay, I got ideas for this one, let me get those out. And then do you jump to the other book? Like, how do you like to do it? Or what's your process look like?
Well, that's a really good question. The process has kind of evolved because, I've only been doing it now for about 5 years, the comic book stuff, the graphic novel work, and working with artists and seeing what that kind of relationship is. I've directed plenty of things, and so I've worked with a lot of other artists before, but comics is its own medium, and it's a thing that I love, and I really respect, and I love the old kind of 70s era graphic novel style stuff. Like, I got hooked on heavy metal. To me was like pornography when I was a kid, and I loved Heavy Metal magazine. It was like a thing that opened up my eyes to everything, and and I loved the movie when it was out. Like, I could see it at midnight movies, or at the drive-in. You could see the Heavy Metal. They'd play that animated movie. I like that era so much, and Richard Corbin is an American artist who was from that era, and Vicente Alcazar is a Spanish artist who was from that era as well. And so working with him on Gringo Loco was just like, it was a dream come true. But the writing process, since the two stories are so different, I tend to focus on one at a time because I want to get in that headspace and I want to be in that world for myself. So like, I have playlists that go with the different story worlds, I have movies and things that I can put on in the background that are going to inspire me and like remind me of what I'm doing, like this is the world, this is the thing. And then I keep all my notes in two separate notebooks. I have one in reaching distance. Hold on. Like, this is the Professor Dario Bava notebook. It's got a bunch of stickers on it and stuff, but Orgy of the Blood Freaks 1 and 2 was like kind of written in this book. And it's almost, and there's like weird sketches of stuff that, page layout ideas that I draw and, try to get like, there's werewolf getting stabbed in the eye holes by silverware. Which ends up, these all end up in the book, and this one's almost done, but then I have a different one for Gringo Loco. And then, so whenever I have ideas, because I do all the coloring too, which is a long, slow, grueling process of like reimagining your story and putting all the colors in. And I do the lettering at the end, which gives me a chance to kind of tighten up the dialogue for Gringo Loco, because that's really like full of subtext. Everything Gringo Loco ever says means like more than one thing, kind of. So that is great to have time to work on that. And then with Professor Dario Bava, it's a very complicated world. So I'm always writing notes and jokes because I want his world to be more of a fun romp, So yeah, I keep it separate, but the schedule sometimes means you change that, because working with Vicente Alcazar, I found a whole different type of artist, like he's an old pro. He doesn't need me to do any sketches or anything. Like, really, he wants the entire script as one thing. He doesn't want 10 pages at a time or whatever to work on. He wants the whole script at once, and then he just starts working and he just goes. And then what we do is we set 10-page deadlines for final ink, so that then that can be put into the pipeline to be color flatted and for me to color if I have any time to do it. But, so that's how it works with Vicente. And he always blows his schedule away. He's always done fast because he's into the story, he's into the character, and he knows this world so well. And it comes from like that time that he, a lot of his greatest stuff kind of became more, people became more aware of him. So I'm really honored to have him working on it. It's amazing. With Mike, because Professor Dario Bava is such a complicated world, there is a lot more back and forth. And it's also because Professor Dario Bava is an idea I've had in different forms for over a decade. So there's a lot of specific things I'm trying to do. So with Mike and I, it's like 10 pages at a time, and we whittle away at it. And we, I do comps, all different types of comps for him to help him with layouts, because I have very specific visual ideas I want to do. And then sometimes I just let him run with, whatever. Because you have to allow the artist to add their touch to it. I think Mike would like it to be more collaborative, but since it's already been pre-written, it's harder with that story to be as collaborative. I think Vicente also, he understands that world because he did the Jonah Hex run in the 70s. That was pretty legendary, and he's just worked. He grew up with those same kind of movies, which are old movies to us, but to him, it's like, this is kind of like the spaghetti Western stuff is he's just totally in tune with it. So it's a very different process.
So did you read Vicente's stuff, or did you have some of his books when you were growing up, and then you just found him, or did you discover him later on? And then how did that whole?
Well, yeah, I did. And I have like the whole Eerie comics from the 70s mostly. I have like the whole digital thing of that, which is all anthologies and horror stuff that he did a lot of work in there. They did a little bio blurb of him in there. And I wasn't really, I thought, he's retired, I don't know. Like we have 3 guys in our company, and Dan, who lives in San Francisco, he's the one who kind of reaches out to all the legends. I call him the legend wrangler, but he actually tries to find these guys that we grew up with, that we thought they were amazing artists. A lot of them are dead. A lot of them are retired and not working anymore. But Vicente was retired, but none of these guys really retire. They're kind of semi-retired. It's like Emmanuel Taglietti, who does the Professor Dario Bava cover paintings. He's an Italian who's like in his 80s. He keeps working even though he's retired. And with Vicente, Dan said I had a different artist in mind who was just not nobody, but she's up and coming, and she was working on her own independent books. And we realized schedule was going to be a problem because that was her priority. So Dan suggested Vicente. I'm like, Vicente Alcazar? He's like, yeah, did this. I'm like, that guy's still around? That guy's still working? He's like, yeah. He's like, I didn't want to mention because maybe you'd think that because he did Jonah Hex, it would be too similar or something. And I'm like, no way, dude. That's a plus, that's a check in the plus column for sure, because he already knows this stuff. Like it's probably going to be fun and easy for him. And so I couldn't, and then I started like realizing, going back, I look up the name and I'm like, oh yeah, he did this, he did that, he did all stuff that I had as a kid. Do you remember Space 1999 comic? I mean, that was like in the late 70s, early 80s. That was a really cool psychedelic comic he worked on. But yeah, I was kind of blown away that I got to work with him. But it wasn't like I went out and reached out for him. I'm busy doing the things that I'm doing on the books, which takes a lot of time. So when somebody falls out of the roster, it's like, okay, what are the other options? And Dan is always ready. He's always got like, well, so and so could do it. And I'm like, who's that? He's like, well, they did this. I'm like, yes, please, So I'm fortunate in that regard for sure too, because that is a lot of legwork and emailing and trying to find who's around, who still wants to do it, because we don't have a name, we're not big or anything. We're independent project working, just in mostly doing events and stuff in California. So we're not with Diamond either, but we have a good reputation. We pay our artists up front. We're not a just wait, we'll see if it sells. It's creator owned comic. We're not going to give you a fee, don't worry. Where you get, residuals, now all of our team gets paid. So that's another reason why we do Kickstarters too, is we got to raise capital to pay the artists, and that's also why I color too, is to save money. And I've had a lot of experience in digital post-production work with animation and photography, and a lot of coloring is Photoshop, and then I also use analog techniques as well, where I paint real textures, I paint real blood splats. Every gory blood splat in Gringo Loco is created with tender loving care.
Well, I would imagine, like, I can see the appeal of creator-owned independent stuff, especially with guys who have worked in the industry for as long as they have. Maybe it's, have they?
Well, if they can get if they can understand that there's a paycheck coming eventually from either, because a lot of them run Kickstarters too. They do way better than ours, they're like, this Kickstarter is to pay the artists, and these are the famous artists we've got, and we've got a dozen, variant covers featuring all of them. That's something we can't really afford to do with our model, but it's still, we feel good about working with some of these legends too, and like kind of getting them out to another audience. That's like a secondary kind of thought, but it is like we're celebrating the stuff that we really loved and putting our own little spin on it. So to actually reward some of these artists for their work and bring them to a new audience, a younger audience who may not have ever heard of them, is really great. It's funny watching, people will see Emmanuel Taglietti's artwork on one of our banners, and some people will just cross through aisles of stuff to get to it, like, who is that? Because they recognize, the artwork as being like, oh, that's somebody good, that's something really cool.
That's a name I know.
That yeah, I probably know that person. Who is that? One person asked us if it was like, did we ask AI to do a fake Emmanuel Taglietti for us?
Oh, no way.
Like, why would you go right to that? Like.
Oh man.
I loved, I guess, I don't know if you call it the back matter or the middle matter, but it was all the interview type bio stuff in the center. I wish more comics did that, because it really gives a face and a name and an explanation. So is that all you that you're putting together, or is that something that you have a designer take care of?
No, I do that too. Yeah, I'm pretty much doing everything that you're seeing in the book except for the pen and ink. And Lydia does the titles and the sound effects lettering, which I know it's not as cool anymore, but I love doing those goofy kind of like sound effect lettering things. And she's great at titles too. But no, I put that together, and it's because we actually want to feature those artists, and we want to make it like we want our books to be like art books, you know, like you hold on to it because you're like, oh, this isn't a floppy, you know, comic that I just didn't really get that interested in, because we print on good paper. We try to make it as nice as we can within our limits, because we also want to be able to sell them in person, because we've learned post COVID, because our first book really came out. We got delivered. Murder Vibes from the Monster Dimension came from the printer on, you know, at the end of February of 2020, and that was like lockdown began like 2 weeks later, basically, and all events were done. And for us, we had our first graphic novel, you know. It had taken almost 2 years to finish it, because it was like 70 pages of art, a bunch of it was like a 100-page book. And you know, it was kind of devastating at the time, because we were like, we want to get out there. We want to introduce this in person. We were going to do WonderCon. We were going to have all of our actors come dressed in costume, because we still had the costumes and they were still here. And all that got jettisoned. You know, it was just like, shit, it's not happening. You know, we can't do it. But then we focused on like, well, we can keep making more books, so let's do that. You know, and that's why I'm where I'm at now. Whew, God, what a mistake.
You know what they say though, killing him was his first mistake. Right, this was the first mistake. But we appreciate your work, man. Like, we really, I hope
Thanks,
that
brother.
whatever that's worth to you, we appreciate it, because we enjoyed it, we loved it. We were really just kind of really hoping for more. But we know and we understand the struggles. Yeah, the struggles and the challenges of doing something all your own, where you don't have a monthly deadline, where people do have to wait. But I think it's pretty cool that you guys have a pretty solid following, and
yeah, thank you. And book 2 is Vicente's book 2 of Gringo Loco. It's so sick. You guys are gonna love it. I'm working on the color, but it's pretty amazing. I think it delivers what everybody kind of what people would be expecting from a second book. That's longer, you know, because these are longer books too. Like this, the Gringo Loco story is going to be 40 pages of just story of the Gringo Loco part of the book. Might be 39. We're debating, but I'm not going to get into that part right now. But it's intense. It's really intense. It takes off right where that book ended, where he's chasing Cyrus Caldwell, across the desert, and he's caught up with him, and Caldwell heads to this like canyon where there's like smoke coming out, and Gringo Loco knows what's probably in there, so he stops, finishes his whiskey, tosses it, pulls both shotguns out from behind his back, and rides into the canyon pass, and it's absolute mayhem from there.
Find out in book 3, you say?
No, that's all book 2. You're gonna find out.
I know. What's one of the, you know, aside from COVID hitting and all that stuff happening, but what's something that was there ever a challenge that came up or something, and you were like just not anticipating, or you didn't think about when you guys were starting to pursue this? Has there been any challenges that you have, you know, you would share with some of the other up and coming creators or guys who want to publish their own work? Tell them, hey, you know what, plan for this, because I didn't know that was going to be an issue or something like that. Did you guys encounter anything like that?
We did. We honestly did. On the very first book, you know, the first graphic novel, the Professor Dario Bava Murder Vibes from the Monster Dimension, we had Mike Dubish, the artist, had sort of gotten some guys, semi-retired guy, and an assistant of his to take on the coloring, and we were going to pay them to do all the coloring, but it wasn't it wasn't like Vicente. I'll put it that way. The guy wasn't that fast. He wasn't that into it. It took forever. And we had to like decide like, what the hell are we going to do? We're already way behind schedule. None of the coloring has even started. And Mike, the artist, he loves just black and white inks. He's not so much into doing color. So we didn't want to have him do it. And then it just became a thing where I had to say like, well, I could do it. I've done this kind of work for decades. I mean, it's a different medium, but I understand color. Color is one of the things I'm known for in terms of my photography and filmmaking and animation work. So I have a mind for color and I have an eye for how to create storytelling elements with color. I'll just do it. And that was, I mean, whew, what a mistake. But it did, because it was a learning curve. But then I feel like with Orgy, the Blood Freaks, and Gringo Loco, the book you guys got, I had it dialed in. You know, like the first book was tough, but then I had it dialed in to where I knew like, okay, I want to do these in different ways and I want to use different techniques, and I felt much more confident going into it. But I would say to people starting out, as many skills as you personally have that you can put into the project, you should assume that at some point you're going to have to put them into the project, because you don't know, you know, when you're nobody and nobody cares really, unless you're paying them. And even then they might not care. You have to rely on yourself, and there's no shame in like falling back on your own skill set if you have it to do some of that stuff, because the more you can take on your own, the less expensive the project is to produce and to see to the end. And then you only got yourself to blame if you're slow or late or whatever. And nobody really cares that much in the world of independent comics and Kickstarter crowdfunding kind of comics, and even events. If you're a local presence, as we're trying to be in Southern California, people forgive you for it and they want to follow along because you're making good work. They know that once you've proven the quality, I think people are willing to go along for the ride. And I'm glad that I ended up doing the coloring, because kind of as the creator, it gives me an authorial flourish as the project, as all the art's been done from a script that I already wrote. It's the last chance I get to kind of like put my spin on it, or kind of direct people's eyes to the things that I think are important, or to adjust the story to highlight the important elements. But I know not everybody has those skills. I know that we're all have our own things, but use whatever you can is what I would say, and count on the fact that you're going to have to do that. And believe in yourself enough to do it. Don't be like, well, I've never colored a graphic novel before. Oh my God. Like that doesn't help you. You just like, oh, I know Photoshop. Oh yeah. I'm a retoucher, freelanced for all my friends. Maybe I'll take a crack at it. Like that's going to help you through some of the rough spots, because you don't know, there's curveballs all the time, like you said, other than COVID, or the stuff that happens because of these big events. Even within the world of it, people are fickle. It's basically independent, low budget work. So it's, you really gotta, I think the other advice I would give is like, really believe in your idea before you pitch it to artists and other creatives. You need to get people excited. You need to make them kind of feel what you feel and see what you see in your head. Whether that's with Vicente, it's very easy. He just needs a script. With Mike, we're building this very, very elaborate world. So there's a lot more reference and a lot more back and forth. But none of that happens by you being like, do it this way, or like you have to get people involved. You have to like try to sell them on it and make them believe. And the best way to do that is just be prepared and be passionate about the project before you reach out to artists, because they'll respond to that passion. I think, I think that's why Vicente and Mike both kind of joined on. They were like, yeah, this sounds like fun. You know, this sounds really cool. They want to do a lot of stuff. You know, this is like a couple of books at least. So that would be my advice.
That's fucking awesome to hear, man. I can just hear the passion in your voice for comics and for creators, and like, I don't know if there's a question in there, but my God, man, like hearing success and hearing it come together, and it just feels like you and the artist are gelling on like such a real level. And I feel like it comes through. When I was reading this, it was just like I read Gringo Loco first, Orgy, and then Murder Vibes from the Monster Dimension.
Yeah.
So I guess I was a little out of order, but
it works.
And the voice throughout, it's cohesive and it's fun, and it's just like visual, and like from the story, it's just like there's love in it, and it's so apparent. So like I said, I don't have a question, but I fucking love it, man. So,
thank you so much. No, I hope so, because well, that is the thing. Like, you better love it too, you know, like, because it's a lot of work, especially if you're going to take on a lot of those roles that you might need to take on to keep the production going, you know, to keep the book, you know, headed to the finish line. You need the passion too, because I've had friends ask me like, aren't you tired of that character now? I mean, God, you've worked on so many projects. I'm like, not yet. Thankfully, I'm not sick of it yet. I still think there's a lot I could do with it. You know, like I'm having fun with it. I wish I could get them done faster, but you know, it's just life. But you know, I'm probably more of the impediment there because I can't color all the time. But I'm glad that people can tell that, you know, there's a lot of love put into it. So thank you, man. That means a lot.
Besides creating, is there anything you're like currently reading, like that's out there that you're like on a monthly read from comic books?
Not when I'm working on I did count Crowley recently. That's Dark Horse, I think. Yeah. Just because that one seemed similar to Bava, so I wanted to check it out. And I love the art. And the coloring in that book's really good. Do you guys know that one, Count Crowley? It's like a horror movie host. It's kind of like Fright Night, the movie, but made into a comic with a female lead. And that was it. And I only did that one as research because when I'm working on the books, I kind of stay in those two worlds, and I don't intermix that much. I'll do one shots, and I read my friend J.M. Brandt, who did Swamp Dogs. He's got a one shot coming out in October, and I read that recently, which I really liked, and you guys should check it out.
Swamp Dogs is good.
We really
yeah. Swallower of Shades is his one shot. It's like a splatter western. It's like a gory sideshow in the old west with a mummy wreaking havoc and eviscerating people. It's pretty fun. JM's a friend, so like I got to read that a while ago, but the Kickstarter campaign, people want you to cross promote, so they send you stuff. So I read another guy's recent thing just to make sure it was something that we wanted to like cross promote with, but he did. It's called Drive-In Kings 1977, and it's like kids who like love the drive-in in 1977 actually going on a real adventure, and it's like kind of it's a 12-issue series that's going to chronicle kind of different eras of exploitation films. So that seems fun. But yeah, I mostly stay in the headspace because I have to finish another book, and I'm writing book 3 as I'm coloring book 2. So I kind of just stay in that realm, and I don't read a lot of other stuff, you know, although I just rattled off a bunch of titles. I try not to because I don't want it to get in there. You know, I don't want it like, you know, if I follow one big like story, I'm worried it's going to like infiltrate my brain, and then I'll be like, oh wait, shit, I'm doing that thing from that book.
It sounds like you got a shit ton of time though to just sit around and read. So.
Dude, have you guys seen all the crazy dumb videos I've been putting up for our Kickstarter? Like, God, man. We're doing well though. We're doing, we're doing pretty well considering, like we're not what blows me away is like people who do the trashy like booby comics, where it's just naked chicks. It's like we've got 25 variant covers of naked cartoon girls. Those campaigns will do over $100,000. It's like, what?
Wild, dude. Yeah. I don't know how that market is, because
I don't know either. You're aware of it though, right? You guys?
Oh yeah, we're
and we're like, why?
We got 24 of those covers.
Who's out there buying $100 cover for just a naked chick? Like, there's the internet for a reason. This ain't 1990.
I know.
I'm not having to hide porn anymore.
Yeah, we just kind of chalk it up to it is what it is. I think that's why we want to interview and talk with creators and get more people, more eyes on it. Anything we can get that on shit that actually has a little bit of, I don't know what I'm saying.
Substance.
Yeah, not just a damn cover.
Yeah.
Like, it's good, fun. It's what we grew up on, what we love. Like,
I mean, mind you, there's boobies in here, but there's something going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's other stuff. Yeah, I don't let go of all the exploitation, and sometimes people see the covers and they're like, "Oh, that's not what I want," and I feel like maybe we're being too clever, because it is kind of like we do sell it as kind of raunchier exploitation, but once you read it, you're like, this is actually kind of like progressive, and it's not really that sexist. It's kind of, it's not what you think it is. There's a little bit more to it than that, I think. And so it's funny to me, like but that's what I've learned with comics too. It's like so many people will either they're into the art at first, and then it's later that they come back and they're like, I love that story. I love that character. I love that thing, And I'm reminded of people I know who are like, I love comics. I never read them. I just get them for the art. And I'm like, there is that level to it. And I understand that to a certain extent. I'm kind of pissed about it, but because I do want people to read it. But, people who love that stuff, they're going to read it, and then they're going to get more out of it. We did a show when we were at Monsterpalooza. The guy next to us, he bought our book from us because he's like, this looks awesome. He's like, I'm going to buy it. We're like, oh, no, take it. He's like, no, I'm buying it. And he read it right there. And he was like, oh my God, dude, that's fucking great. I'm going to buy the other one. Give me the other one. And he's like, it's hilarious. It's like exploitation on the outside, but inside there's so much more to it. Like it's like a great kind of, paradox, I guess, and we thought that was clever and like, we'll lure them. But, now that I've done it for a couple of books, I'm like, clever, whatever. Let's tell people what it really is. Let's get people excited about what it really is. I love the exploitation art. It's just like, I'm not going to do just a TNA comic, that's not what I'm going to do. That doesn't interest me. Yeah. I mean, Pornhub. I mean, come on.
But that's what's crazy about your guys' covers too, man, that they could literally be a fucking like movie poster. You could post up in your room. You're like, oh, what is that? And I'm like, dude, it's this comic. Let me tell you about it. Because that is, and we've even said that's what kind of drew us in when we were first walking by your guys' booth. We're like, oh shit, what's that? And then once you actually saw us on it, we're like, we got to get this. This guy sounds like
the painted covers, man. I love those actually physically painted covers, and we get them from the artists too. Like Dan, the artist, the Legend Wrangler, he will pay to get the original painting too. So we could have a Diabolik museum one day where we have all these paintings up.
Even like if you get rights to it, there's a print market for that too, because Frank Frazetta's family can still make a living.
Yeah,
his artwork, and a lot of the stuff is stuff that we saw in Eerie Comics and stuff on the Death Dealer stuff that he was doing. Heavy metal, like a lot of those heavy metal guys do. They also do their those heavy metal covers, and
we do have Taglietti prints. We do have a couple of those left that are on the campaign. It's just hard to do because we have to like have the prints made, ship them to Italy, have him sign and number them, have them shipped back, and that's loot. You know, that's the kind of the hard thing that we face is like, yeah, Vicente's in Spain, Mike's in Mexico, Taglietti's in Italy, Suspiria, who did a cover for us, she's up in Canada. So we have a lot of like doing stuff international these days is expensive and slow. So that's kind of a hindrance, but yeah, we love doing the print, love offering that artwork. And we've had people from all over the world get those Taglietti prints from us because they're like, oh, there's no print editions of this guy's work right now. This is the only one we could find. We want one of each. We're like, oh, thank you. You appreciate the maestro.
Please have a plane ticket option.
I know. I would love to go to Italy and do, what is it, the Lake Como Comic Con or something? And have,
BallerCon.
That would be such a blast, man. And then have Taglietti come.
I was gonna say, bring them over here.
Yeah, I know. He said it. He's like, oh, we love San Diego. Have us come to San. But it's like, God, we can't afford that, dude. I mean, maybe with this Kickstarter we will be able to.
Other than the Kickstarter, where can people find you?
ProfessorDarioBava.com is the main website for the books. It's got both Gringo Loco and Professor Dario Bava on there. And we're also on Instagram, Diabolik LLC. We're not really on Twitter anymore. And we're on Facebook as well, X, yeah, triple X.
Any TikTok?
We don't do excretions. We used to tweet, but now we don't excrete. And yeah, I mean, ProfessorDarioBava.com, you can also sign up for the mailing list. You get free stuff. You get links to like the PDF of the first book, Murder Vibes from the Monster Dimension. So that's a good place to go. But the Kickstarter, just type in Orgy on the search and you'll get right to us. Oh. It's true. It works. And we're on there for like the next 8 or 9 days, and you can get exclusive stuff at the Kickstarter that you won't be able to get anywhere else. So check it out if you can.
Awesome, man. And what has been your favorite part of this whole venture since the beginning? What's been your favorite, something you've loved?
We have started doing events, and my favorite thing, and it's happened at every event almost, is you meet somebody one day and you talk to them and they grab your book and they come back the next day and they've read it and they loved it and they're talking to you about it and they're asking what else they can read, what else they can get from you. As a creator, that's like, that's just chef's kiss. It's the most beautiful thing in the world. Brings a tear to your eye because it's so much work, and just to get a little bit of that back, like when you posted that video about Gringo Loco, dude, you made my day. It just made my day. So that's the best part, is like when you know that you reached people and they give you something back for that, is like, that means the most to me.
Well, we'll continue to give back, man. You guys producing,
thanks, brother.
Picking it up, we'll keep supporting it.
Awesome.
Well, thank you very much, Phil.